Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're here today because we are diving into literally the single most effective thing you can do to reset your brain and body every single day. We're talking about sleep, we're going to explore the fascinating science, and yes, the intense debates surrounding our biological foundation, drawing heavily on neuroscientist Matthew Walker's massive bestseller, Why We Sleep, along with some absolutely crucial scientific critiques that came out after it was published. So my goal today? To give you a super visual, structured, and deeply practical look at how you can optimize your health through the sheer power of rest. Let's get into it. Okay, I want you to be completely honest with yourself for a second. When was the absolute last time you woke up naturally, feeling completely energized without instantly reaching for a cup of coffee just to jumpstart your brain? If you're kind of struggling to remember, well, you are far from alone. In fact, roughly two-thirds of adults across all developed nations actually fail to get the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. It's wild, right? We've essentially normalized a state of chronic fatigue. Which brings us to this really powerful idea from Matthew Walker. He calls sleep the elixir of life. Now, we hear all the time that sleep is the third pillar of good health, right? Standing right there next to diet and exercise. But the core thesis we're exploring today completely flips that on its head. Sleep isn't just a pillar. It is the literal foundation that your diet and exercise sit on. If you weaken that bedrock, your careful eating and your strict gym routine become drastically less effective. It's a total game changer when you think about it that way. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the sleep deprivation problem. Second, NREM versus REM sleep. Third, the impacts on your brain and body. Fourth, a scientific reality check. And finally, some actionable sleep habits. All right, jumping right into Section 1, the sleep deprivation problem, a costly epidemic. Modern society so often treats sleep as just an inconvenience. We love to celebrate the whole hustle culture of pulling all-nighters. But consider this massive number, $54 million. That is the estimated annual net capital loss for a single large company just due to insufficient sleep among its employees. 54 million. This isn't just some abstract health issue. Sleep deprivation literally destroys productivity, crushes creativity, lowers motivation, and, this is crazy, it actually makes employees more unethical and prone to lying. Sleepy brains are quite literally costing us millions. Moving on to Section 2, NREM versus REM sleep, the nightly architecture. Now, what's really interesting about this is how exquisitely complex the biological process of sleep actually is. Your brain cycles through these distinct phases. The first is NREM, or non-rapid eye movement sleep. Think of this as your brain's deep cleaning and file transfer system. During NREM, these slow brainwaves act like a massive courier service. They physically move the factual memories you gathered during the day from the short-term storage, your hippocampus, over to the secure long-term storage of the cortex. And while that's happening, NREM is also physically pruning away unnecessary neural connections and literally washing out dangerous metabolic waste. It's a real power cleanse. Then we shift into REM, or rapid eye movement sleep. This is your dream state. So if NREM is about saving the facts, REM is all about integration and emotional regulation. It is basically the brain's informational alchemy. During REM, your brain collides all the new information you just learned with your entire back catalog of memories, which is exactly what sparks creative problem solving. It also acts as this built-in overnight therapy, stripping the visceral, painful emotional charge away from difficult memories. And amazingly, the emotional centers of your brain can actually be up to 30% more active during REM than when you are wide awake. How wild is that? So notice the beautiful asymmetry of our sleep cycle here. Why do we need both? Well, think of memory kind of like sculpting a statue. Early in the night, NREM sleep dominates. It's this general excavatory force, taking the raw clay of your daily experiences and weeding out the massive chunks of unnecessary material. Then, later in the night, REM sleep takes over. It's the fine detail etching, right? Strengthening the really important connections and bringing the final masterpiece together. You absolutely fundamentally need both phases. Which brings us to Section 3, brain and body impacts, the downward spiral. So, what exactly happens when we shortchange this delicate biological process? Well, over the last several decades, as the average amount of sleep we get has steadily decreased, the rate of obesity has risen in a near-perfect parallel. And this brilliantly illustrates how global sleep loss runs perfectly parallel to the rise in obesity. It is a really stunning representation of how a lack of sleep completely derails our physical health. And the mechanism behind that trend, it basically comes down to this number right here, 300.
When you are sleep deprived, you consume an average of 300 extra calories a day. Why is that? Well, because sleep loss creates a massive hormonal imbalance. It actively increases ghrelin, that's the hormone that makes you feel hungry, while simultaneously suppressing leptin, which is the hormone that signals to your brain that you're full. So you are biologically driven to overeat, and you specifically crave sweets and heavy carbohydrates.
But it's not just your waistline. The impact on your mood is just as severe. When you're operating on a sleep deficit, your emotional brain completely loses its regulatory control. Think of it like driving a car. The amygdala, your deep emotional center, acts as the gas pedal. And under sleep deprivation, it becomes hyperactive. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, which provides your rational impulse control, acts as the brakes. When you don't sleep, those brakes go completely offline. So you're basically left driving with a floored gas pedal and absolutely no brakes. It makes you reactive, impulsive, and just emotionally volatile.
And the physical toll goes even deeper than that. Chronic sleep deprivation brutally weakens your immune system. In fact, get this, if you get a flu shot while you're sleep deprived, your body produces significantly fewer antibodies, rendering the vaccine much, much less effective. It also accelerates cardiovascular disease, it actively alters your fundamental DNA, and it disrupts your blood sugars so severely that just 1 week of bad sleep can leave you clinically mimicking prediabetes. It is serious stuff. Let's shift gears to Section 4, the scientific reality check, nuance, and accuracy. Now, because why we sleep was such a massive phenomenon, it naturally underwent some intense scrutiny by the broader scientific community. And to give you the absolute best, most objective perspective today, we really need to look at the scientific consensus. For instance, the book claims that sleeping less than 6 hours a night doubles your cancer risk. However, independent critiques point out that a massive systematic review of over 1.5 million people found no such associative link. The book also states the World Health Organization declared a sleep loss epidemic, but the WHO never actually made that official declaration. And finally, the claim that a lack of sleep is universally harmful kind of misses the nuance that controlled sleep deprivation therapy is actually a highly studied, really effective treatment for certain types of depression. So the crucial point is, we need to correct these factual errors just to prevent any unnecessary panic. Because, frankly, correcting these facts isn't about dismissing the importance of sleep at all. It's about preventing what sleep doctors call sleep anxiety. One of the totally unintended consequences of the book's strict warnings was this huge wave of people obsessing over getting exactly 8 hours of sleep, tracking it relentlessly on their watches, and ultimately triggering so much stress that they actually developed insomnia. It backfired. Just remember this. Human beings are incredibly biologically resilient. An occasional night of bad sleep is not going to ruin your life, and it's certainly not going to ruin your long-term health. All right, bringing it all home with Section 5, Actionable Sleep Habits, Reclaiming Your Rest. Let's move to and see how this builds into practical, science-backed lifestyle changes that you can implement right now. First, set your thermostat to around 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body literally needs to drop its core temperature to initiate and stay in deep sleep. Second, embrace the 20-minute rule. If you are tossing and turning for more than 20 minutes, get out of bed. Go do something relaxing in dim light until you actually feel sleepy. If you just lie there, your brain starts associating the mattress with anxiety and wakefulness, which is exactly what we don't want. Finally, limit the alcohol and caffeine. Caffeine blocks your sleepiness signals, and alcohol severely fragments your sleep, completely robbing you of that emotionally restorative REM dream sleep we talked about earlier. Throughout your day, you want to build these daily habits. Dim your electric lights 2 to 3 hours before bed. That artificial evening light totally fools your brain's internal master clock into thinking the sun hasn't set yet, which delays your natural melatonin release. Also, engage in regular exercise, but maybe try not to do it right before bed. And most importantly, maintain a rigidly consistent wake-up and sleep time, even on the weekends. Actually, scratch that, especially on the weekends. We really need to let go of the catch-up sleep myth. You cannot fully repay a sleep debt that you built up during the week by just sleeping in on Saturday. Consistency is absolutely your greatest ally here. So knowing everything we've covered today, from the incredible power of your brain's nighttime courier service to the stark reality of sleep anxiety, right down to that simple 68-degree thermostat trick, what is one single, simple habit that you will change tonight to reclaim your right to a full night's rest? Really think about it. Don't try to change the whole shebang at once. Just pick one thing. Because investing in your sleep is literally the ultimate investment in a vibrant, healthy, and completely focused life.
Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do, and I will see you next time. Sleep well.